For most of his life, Wolfgang Van Halen has lived under a shadow, the kind that stretches far and wide, cast by a legend. Born into the orbit of fame and genius, the only son of guitar virtuoso Eddie Van Halen and actress Valerie Bertinelli, Wolfgang's life was destined to be extraordinary. But extraordinary often comes with a price. Behind the flashes of cameras, the adoring crowds, and the glittering stage lights, his story has always been one of quiet struggle, deep loneliness, and an uphill battle to prove that he was more than just a name, more than just an inheritance. From the very beginning, Wolfgang's world was a mix of privilege and pressure. Music was not a choice, it was encoded in his DNA. Yet being Eddie Van Halen's son came with expectations the moment he took his first steps. To the public, he was a natural heir to a rock empire. But behind closed doors, he was just a shy, curious boy navigating a life he didn't ask for. And inside him, a quiet war raged, a fight to be seen and heard on his own terms. Born in 1991, Wolfgang's early years were shaped by the duality of his parents' love and the enormity of the Van Halen legacy. Valerie Bertinelli, protective and grounded, was determined to shield him from the chaos of fame, while Eddie sought to raise a son who was both curious and independent. Their home, despite being filled with music legends and gold records, was deliberately ordinary. Wolfgang played with toys more than instruments, watched cartoons more than concerts, and experienced a childhood defined not by celebrity but by warmth, structure, and routine. Yet the world outside had already made its judgments. From the moment Wolfgang stumbled across a stack of Van Halen records in his father's collection, he glimpsed the reality of his inheritance. "I saw my name on the box," he later recalled, "and I asked my dad, 'What's this?' He said, 'Oh yeah, this is what I do.'" That simple exchange reshaped his understanding of his father, not just a dad teaching him to ride a bike, but a hero to millions. And with that realization came an invisible weight. Every note he would ever play would be measured against the benchmark of genius. Every praise would come with comparison. He was both blessed and burdened by his name. Even as a child, Wolfgang understood one thing. He did not want to be the next Eddie Van Halen. He wanted to be the first Wolfgang Van Halen. That decision, to carve his own identity while honoring his father's legacy, would guide every step of his life, from music to relationships to the way he handled tragedy. Behind the scenes of success and fame was a story of resilience, humility, and perseverance, far from the surface glamour the public assumed. In the early 1990s, while Eddie Van Halen was revered as a guitar god, his son was learning the quiet rhythms of life far from the stage. Valerie Bertinelli carefully shielded him from the glitz, the gossip, and the temptations that often accompany stardom. Their home was a sanctuary filled not with luxury, but with ordinary moments, family dinners, homework sessions, laughter, and occasional silence. Eddie, meanwhile, presented a different kind of fatherhood than the public expected. Behind the legend of the wild rock star, he was gentle, patient, and surprisingly shy. He encouraged Wolfgang's curiosity, but never forced him toward music. "He never told me what I had to be," Wolfgang later reflected. Music entered Wolfgang's life gradually. Around the age of 8, Eddie handed him drumsticks, teaching the young boy not guitar, but rhythm. "If you can hit these in time, that's what playing drums is," Eddie explained, using a stack of magazines as practice targets. It was unconventional, simple, yet profoundly effective. Before long, Wolfgang had a small drum kit and a room where he would spend hours perfecting rhythms until his hands ached while his father watched quietly from down the hall. By age 9, he had developed skill enough to impress even Alex Van Halen, Eddie's brother, and the band's drummer. Despite early musical talent, Wolfgang's world remained largely innocent. He did not yet grasp the expectations awaiting him beyond the walls of his home. Massive drum sets and guitars seemed like oversized toys. His parents ensured he could enjoy childhood before becoming anything else. In that protected space, Wolfgang built the foundations of humility, curiosity, and quiet strength, qualities that would carry him through future storms of grief and fame. As Wolfgang moved into his teenage years, The rhythm of childhood gradually transformed into something louder and more intricate. After years of drumming, he gravitated toward the guitar. The shift was inevitable. After all, he was growing up surrounded by some of the most revolutionary guitar riffs in rock history. But for Wolfgang, it was never about imitation. Instead, it was about exploration. Understanding how sound could tell a story, Eddie, despite his genius, was not much of a teacher. He'd just say, "Do this," and then play something only he could do, Wolfgang said. Learning from a legend proved technically challenging. The gap was not emotional, it was structural. How do you teach instinctive genius? Wolfgang realized that the only way forward was self-directed learning. Late nights found him poring over guitar tabs, studying bands like Blink-182 and System of a Down, and experimenting until he began shaping his own sound, a unique combination of rhythm learned from drumming and the raw energy of adolescence. "I wanted to develop my own skills and sound," he told Spin. "Otherwise, you're just listening to a shaky Van Halen cover band." That mindset, part defiance, part self-protection, laid the foundation for his future artistry. Yet, as Wolfgang honed his craft, he also learned about public scrutiny. The press rarely focused on his talent alone, always highlighting his parentage. Each photo, each rumor, each news story came with the implicit label, Eddie Van Halen's son. Even before stepping on a stage, the world had prejudged him. Then came 2006, a turning point. Eddie, inspired by his son's talent, invited Wolfgang to jam with him and Alex Van Halen. The chemistry was immediate. "That's Wolfgang." Alex asked, incredulous at the powerful bass lines being played by his nephew. The moment was not only a proud family milestone, but the spark of something much larger. When Eddie officially asked his 15-year-old son to join Van Halen as bassist, Wolfgang hesitated. He feared accusations of nepotism. Yet he agreed, under one humorous condition: no bass solos. A teenager's joke masking a young man's fear. The 2007 to 2008 reunion tour with David Lee Roth would test Wolfgang like nothing before. Surrounded by skeptics and seasoned musicians, he had to prove he belonged. Every note, every performance was a trial by fire, and he rose to the challenge. Though critics remained, Wolfgang earned respect through talent, commitment, and undeniable presence. He was no longer just a name, he was becoming an artist in his own right. By 12, his obsession with guitar intensified, fueled by self-study and the drive to develop a unique voice. He refused to simply replicate Eddie's virtuosity. His sound became modern, raw, and distinct, shaped by rhythm, emotion, and youthful defiance. The journey was not easy. Public scrutiny was relentless, but each challenge hardened his resolve, sharpening his identity as a musician who could stand independently. In 2013, Wolfgang sought autonomy, joining the band Tremonti, Mark Tremonti's project, not Van Halen, to explore music beyond his father's shadow. Within a single night, he memorized an entire set and was touring the next day. He recorded 2 albums, balancing a dual life as both Van Halen's bassist and an independent artist seeking recognition on his own terms. Then tragedy struck. Eddie Van Halen's battle with cancer returned with full force, culminating in his death on October 6, 2020. Wolfgang's world collapsed. "Some days are better than others," he said through tears. "It doesn't seem like the pain will ever go away. I feel like crawling in a hole every day. But I know my dad would be really pissed if I did." In the months that followed, Wolfgang channeled grief into creativity, crafting music that was both tribute and therapy. 2021 marked a pivotal year, the release of Wolfgang's debut solo album, Mammoth WVH. The title nods to his father's first band, symbolizing the connection to legacy while asserting independence. Remarkably, Wolfgang performed every instrument himself: drums, bass, guitar, and vocals. The lead single, Distance, written in memory of his father, topped Billboard's hard rock chart and earned a Grammy nomination. For the first time, he stood fully in the spotlight, not as Eddie Van Halen's son, but as Wolfgang Van Halen, the artist. In 2022, he toured as the frontman for Mammoth WVH, a terrifying yet liberating step into the limelight. The fear of stepping beyond his father's shadow transformed into confidence as audiences finally experienced Wolfgang's authentic sound. His journey was no longer about inheritance. It was about creation, expression, and identity. 2023 brought personal milestones. After 8 years of dating, Wolfgang married photographer Andrea Alop in Los Angeles, incorporating his father into the ceremony through Eddie's instrumental 316. It was a profound symbol of love, legacy, and continuity. That same year, he released Mammoth 2, again performing every instrument himself, demonstrating that independence and skill could coexist with humility. In 2024, he reached new heights, performing at the Oscars alongside Ryan Gosling and Slash. A surreal moment, yet emblematic of Wolfgang's rise from shadow to prominence. For the first time, the world saw him not as an extension of a legend, but as a distinct, commanding musician. Wolfgang Van Halen's story is one of triumph over expectation, grief, and public scrutiny. From a shy boy drumming on magazines to a man shaping an entire musical universe alone, he has transformed loss into artistry. His journey proves that even under the heaviest shadows, resilience, passion, and authenticity can forge a new legacy. Wolfgang is no longer just Eddie Van Halen's son. He is a musician, a frontman, a creative force, and a testament to the fact that grief and pressure can be transformed into greatness.